All right. So hello, everybody. I'm Darcy. I'm the creator of the Vibrant Woman program, and I am delighted today to share my very special guest, my friend and mentor, Dr. Phil Maffetone, the original Dr. Phil. So when I call him Dr. Phil, you don't need to get confused about that. Phil is really the reason why I'm here doing this work today. He saved my life. His work is paradigm shifting. He's a pioneer in so many ways, and this is a real honor to share any time and space with you, Phil. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Darcy. It's great to see you again.
And we're actually here because you have a new project out that we are going to dive into today. I can't wait to hear all about your new book. And before we talk about that, I'm going to, I just want to introduce you a little bit more. This is going to go out to a lot of channels where people already know Phil. And I just want to share, and my channels where people may or may not, if you hear me talking about my Vibrant Woman program, and I say it's based on something called the MAF method, this is why. MAF, M-A-F, maximum aerobic function. This is Phil's pioneering paradigm shifting work that really gets to the root cause of modern metabolic disease. And I met Phil, I'm going to say these numbers, I'm going to regret it. I'm ageless, by the way, but I did meet Phil about 2 decades ago. And you came on my radar. I was looking for answers for my daughter who had been brain injured. And, I was given a long list of labels for her and told these are the prognoses. They don't expect anything much to improve or to happen. And that was not going to be okay with me. So when I found you and you taught us all of this stuff about neuroplasticity and all of your pioneering methods for neurobiofeedback, the way that the brain is so changeable, and what we are doing to it with our modern lifestyle, modern habits, the way we're hurting our brains. So you saved Haley's life. You saved my life too, because I was on the path to burnout. I've hit burnout right just about after the time that I met you, and decided, oh, wow, actually, I already know a lot of these tools to heal a body, to address adrenal fatigue, to heal a brain. I know these tools, I'm just not using them on myself yet. And so that journey back from burnout doesn't stop. Like, people want to get well, they want to feel better, and the journey doesn't stop there. If you keep living in a way that aligns with what your body and brain need, I'm just here to say that path, I'm in uncharted territory, because that path goes all the way to thriving. It keeps going, and it's beautiful and brilliant. And so I have you to thank for that. And I just want to do that publicly.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for being an active participant in life. I mean, that's how people get better, not by being passive. So you took the reins and ran with it, and you did what you needed to do, and you individualized whatever I had to say. You individualized it, and that's really the key. And that's sort of been my routine for my whole career, is that I've always wanted to help people. Well, there's a lot of ways you could try to do that, but the best way is through education, and offer people a way, like I've done for myself. And I have the same story that you had. Offer people a way to figure out what to do. It's often, hey, I'm feeling this way and that way, and what should I do? And what we're used to, what we're told, and what we've all grown up believing, is that there's some magic formula, there's some silver bullet, and it's really, we're looking for this off-the-shelf program, one size fits all, and it doesn't exist. And because if we're not active, we keep looking for that, and we keep hoping somebody gives them the right pill, and that it doesn't work that way. And that's part of our current healthcare dilemma, which I've grown up with, and everyone here has grown up with it. So that active participation, Darcy, is really what you've done so well.
Yeah. And because I had to, and I guess that's just the way I was built too, that I'm not very good at taking no for an answer, or which is actually how we met. I want to just tell this really quick story too, because what we're going to talk about tonight is your brand new book, and I'm going to let you tell about it. But I was really hell-bent on getting Haley has some muscle imbalance because it's cortical, it's a brain injury. And in her left ankle. And it used to be really bad. It was so bad that she was diagnosed with these words, mild cerebral palsy. Those are just words to us now because we understand it's really, muscle balance and brain signals to a certain muscle group. And so I cornered you. I remember I tracked you down the hall and I cornered you at the auditorium doors at the Institute. And I was like, you are the one who knows what I need to know. I need you to help me with this. And you were so calm in your just beautiful, relaxed, Phil way. You said, well, I'm a musician now, you said. I was like, I'm not even sure what that means. And so it took me quite a while to really track you down and get you to help us with that muscle imbalance. But that's where we're going to take this story, because you are this brilliant, paradigm shifting searcher, researcher, clinician working with world famous people in athletics, right? And you woke up one day and knew you were meant to be a songwriter. And that's what you were going to do next. And that's what you've done. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I've had more than that wake up call. I've had a number of wake up calls in my life that were as dramatic, if not more. The first one was when I was in my mid-teens as a brain injured lost child, and then a couple of more times. The music thing, yeah, I was in sports, but I worked with other kinds of individuals too, sort of the broad category of human performance. So if you wanted more human performance, you come see me, and whatever it was you needed to perform better at it, I said, well, here's how we could help. And it brought me to a lot of arenas, not only sports, but well, I won't get into all the strange things that the strange populations that I ended up in, and sports was one of the most fun, and probably the one people know me, know me best as a sports type coach. And I lectured a lot. I traveled a lot for lecturing and for events, and I was sort of at the peak of that career, and I woke up one day, and it's now just passed, but it was 20 years ago today, as my first chapter reads, because I was thinking about things when I thought, well, gee, maybe I should write a book about this stuff. And I'm thinking about the calendar, and I'm thinking, oh, it's I don't celebrate holidays. I celebrate every day. So I don't think of, oh, this is my 5th year anniversary or 20th year, and I realized that, gee, in a few days, it'll be 20 years since I woke up and decided not that I was going to be a songwriter, but that I was a songwriter. I was a human being. And human beings are songwriters. Humans have been writers from the beginning.
Wow.
Humans had music, and that's how we all evolved to where we're at today as a super species. And I woke up, and I was a little embarrassed that I was a consumer, an intense consumer of music, much of my life, most of my life. And I was not giving anything back. And I knew I had studied, biology certainly and other things, and knew that humans sang from the beginning. That's how we choose our most, our best match, by singing to a potential mate. And the mate hears us sing, and the mate now knows what our brain and body is like. And
Wow.
does it match what my brain and body is like? And what a deal that is. It's just like the birds we hear every morning and evening, and all the animals, they're sending messages to another. And that's what humans did. And that's what I wanted to do. So I basically quit my day job, quit my job, thinking maybe, this is it. I'm retiring. It's been a good career and time to move on. And I ran off to LA to study music and try to figure out what songwriting was all about, because I had no clue. I didn't really, I knew 3 chords on the guitar, and it's as far as I could go. And so I was almost starting from the beginning. And it's been a wonderful ride. And somewhere, I think a couple of years later, in LA, I was working with a guy who had a brain problem, and had him hooked up to an EEG to measure brain waves. And I had just finished a session in the studio, and we were in the studio because I wanted to test him in the studio, which is where his life was really. And we're talking about, the stuff I recorded and who was there. And it was a great conversation. And he said, well, do you have anything you could play for me? And so I turned on one of the songs and didn't realize that he was already hooked up now, and he was being recorded. His brain waves were being recorded. And he's listening to this song, a song that I wrote and recorded. And his brain is going crazy. His alpha brain waves were just off the screen. And I'm thinking, this is something I created? I've never had this experience. And I just thought, I haven't retired. I've just expanded my health and fitness world to include music, and that's sort of what brought me back to where I am today, and sort of where this book came from. I didn't want to isolate myself as a singer-songwriter. I still sing and I still write and I still record. I have 8 albums, and I'm trying to get into a studio to record a 9th. And up until COVID, I had a really wonderful performing career as well. And unknown to me, I never intended on, I didn't even intend on recording. I didn't know what songwriters did. I thought they just sat in the back room and then, wrote a song and handed it to some producer who went off and, and no, I had to be part of the process along the way. And someone, I was in LA and I played a song for this guy, and he said, that's a really good song. He said, writing a good song is half writing a great song. The other half is performing it, is sharing it with other people. And only then will you know what your song is all about. And man, he was right on. It was an amazing journey, which I had already been on, and now it even got more amazing to see myself and other people, and to have other people see themselves in my music, like we do with all music. We listen to a great oldie that we can relate to, whatever. And we kind of see ourselves in this creative piece of art. And it's one of the many things that makes music so wonderful and so helpful for the brain.
Well, I have a question for you. I actually have two. You mentioned alpha waves and that your friend in the studio, you had him hooked up to the EEG machine. So you're able to see what kind of brain waves, he's producing and what amounts and that kind of thing. So you saw this light up with alpha waves. Can you talk for just a minute about what those are and why they're so important?
Yeah. This is a very important thing. And this is something I talk about in the book, throughout the book. It's a very important part of the book. And it's the different states of consciousness that we could be in. We can be in one state of consciousness one moment, and then we can shift gears and be in another state, and then we can shift gears and be in another state. Right now, where you and I are mostly, you especially, are in a
Don't
beta. Your brain waves are beta. You're thinking and talking, and there's a lot going on in your brain. You're focused, you're intentionally focused on the screen, as am I. And this is a beta state. It's a busy brain. It's what we do when we give directions or we're having a conversation about something. And but if we slow down a little bit and relax, if we listen to music, if we just close our eyes and sit back, if we do deep breathing, if we meditate, we go into this alpha state. Alpha is a different state. It's a relaxed, alert state of awareness. And it's a very, very interesting state because it reduces stress hormones. It balances the autonomic nervous system. It's a very powerful state of consciousness and something we should be doing every day. And it's why people think, I've got to join a meditation class, I've got to do yoga, I've got to, but we don't have to do those classes. We don't need to spend an hour. We don't need to, it's a 5-minute thing. In fact, I have something called the 5-minute power break, which you've done.
And I teach too. Everybody
teach.
here knows about it. Yeah, for people watching the recording, we've got some special guests hiding in the background that were fortunate enough to be here live with us. And they're part of my Vibrant Woman program, and they learn the 5-minute power break, otherwise known as respiratory biofeedback. And that name really resonated with me because I was out for all of the brain benefits. Everything I started learning from you, I learned because I wanted to heal a hurt brain, right? So that all really resonated with me. And I know you renamed it, and there are a lot of people who, because I think your work becomes so, I know you've got tens of thousands of followers around the world. I mean, we've got a Facebook group full of people who want to learn to train the way you teach. And a lot of people that I meet and talk with that are familiar with your work have become, I'm not pointing fingers, but it's a pattern I notice. They become very dogmatic about it. And like what you've said once in one article becomes this gospel. And, this is the other thing I love to hear from you, because having worked with you myself closely, that's nothing could be farther from the truth. I mean, my work is based on intuition. We teach it through the lens of a woman's body because I said, Phil, you're a genius, but you've never lived in a body with ovaries. So you can only help us to a certain point. We have to take this work for ourselves, and it needs to be intuitive. And that isn't just for women. I think you're one of the most intuitive people, literally living from the instincts that come within your body, anybody I've ever met. And it has everything to do with this state of consciousness you're talking about, these alpha waves and the energy, that level of consciousness and how we exist there, right?
Yeah, and you use those states of consciousness to our benefit. If we need to be in beta function, and then we need to recover, we need to rest from that, go into alpha, and now get the benefits of alpha or theta, which is an even deeper connection. And of course, when we sleep, we're in delta, and it's like trying to meditate, if we're trying to meditate and we've got all this chatter in our brain, it's like, going to sleep, trying to go to sleep, but we have all this chatter in our brain. Our days so what about tomorrow and blah blah. We should be in delta when we want to be in delta, not stuck in beta, being stressed from the day. So yeah, the key is to be able to shift gears into those states of consciousness when it best matches our needs for the moment. And I might have told you that I do have a sort of an advanced form of that 5-minute power break called the meditative dance, which is sort of the next level up out in space, where you're dancing, you're lying down and you're dancing.
Tell
You're
us
doing the
more.
5-minute power break, but you're listening to something with more beats, musical beats, and so you're moving your body as many, not in a major way necessarily, but you're moving a lot of muscles with the music. Your eyes are closed, you're in alpha, and you're doing your thing for 5 minutes and getting this amazing intense alpha theta effect, which is, it's a lot harder than the 5-minute power break because it's much more active. But it's another thing that's in the book. But yeah, I don't, just to go back to something you said, I don't have, I'm not a dogma person. I don't have a diet. I don't have rules. I don't have, that's not true. I mean, there's some basic rules, natural laws that we should all follow. Avoid junk food and, don't be stupid and don't hurt people. But there's, there's no diet I have. There's no running program I have. You're the program. You figure out what works best for you. And what works best for you now may change in 6 months, most likely will in a year and 2 years. And I go through that all the time. I'm always discovering things about myself that I need to do more of or less of, or for the first time, I'm going to do this. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. And I think music has helped me with that as well. My music mentor, producer, a guy who called me up 4 days after I woke up and decided to be a songwriter. And I was pacing for 4 days. That's what I was doing during that time, wondering, what am I going to do? I knew that I had to be a songwriter. I didn't know what a songwriter did, and I didn't know what I do next. All I knew was I got to leave this other career to be a songwriter. And on the 4th day, this guy calls me up, says, I read one of your books. I want to consult with you. And I said, I don't do that anymore because I just became a songwriter. And I don't know if you know Rick Rubin, but Rick is, so I thought about, well, I should get somebody to help me with this thing I'm going to do, this songwriting thing. The only person I could think of was George Martin, who produced the Beatles all those years, and George wasn't available. Well, Rick is sort of the next guy on the list, and so that was a very interesting thing to have happen. And then you just go for it. It's discovering a passion, and we all have passions, and they may change from time to time. They may get more intense from time to time. And we need to follow our passions. If we don't have any passions, we're in trouble.
Yeah. The way that relates to my life and my work is, I tend to call it intuition or instinct, but I think those words can be, I don't know, people can.
Well, we have both.
Yeah.
We have this amazing brain. We have intuition. We have instincts, but we also have intellect, and a lot of other things. And as humans, we want to develop all of those areas. That's really, I mean, that's what my approach is all about. That's what I did when I snapped out of my lifeless state as a in my middle teens, as a brain injured kid. And it's what I've continued doing throughout my life. I don't plan on stopping too soon.
Which I thank you for, because you are a living, well, you're a living example of this. So, and that's one of the things that happened to me on my, I call it my journey to thriving. And what it really is living these principles that you teach, which is not dogmatic. It's not following Phil's rules. It's following Phil's example. You know, you taught me how to find my carbohydrate tolerance. Okay, amazing. My body thrives, you know, when I'm eating no junk, less sugar, and the carbs I can metabolize. You taught me how to find my ideal heart rate for movement intensity, right? Amazing. I burn more fat, my brain thrives. And so what has happened then is I have found it a lot easier. The women doing my program say this all the time too. They're like, I had no idea my intuition was really there, but now I can hear it. I can hear it now. And it's because we're getting the static out of the system. It's because we're,
That's the
develop,
key. Is
yeah.
it's not that that I'm giving anyone something or anyone is giving anyone something. It's that we're kind of helping push the stuff out of the way. It's like, how do you get into alpha? Well, you get into alpha by pushing the day away for the moment, for 5 minutes even. And when that occurs, you become the intuitive, instinctual person that we are all meant to be. I mean, it's kind of that simple.
It really is, isn't it? Like we literally were born to thrive. We were born to be powerful and creative and healthy and vibrant and alive in every way. And this, yeah, there are these tools that we can use to sort of clear the static out of the way, which is all our modern habits, right? And allow this bubbling. I liken it to the, you know, the grass that keeps growing through the cracks in the sidewalk. It's like there is this energy of life that will come through us if we will only allow it. But can you, I just want to talk a little bit more about alpha waves, because what I notice is that it really does get easier to get there and to stay there longer the more we practice. Like it literally has to be practice. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, how do we, have you lived this? I mean, is this your own experience? Like, do you think that's why suddenly one day you wake up and realize I've got all this creativity? I've been writing songs in my head all these years. I mean, is that literally an outcome of this practice that you were doing all along? Do you think?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I was busy doing a lot of other creative things using alpha waves all the time. I mean, I'd be with a patient and I would just stop what I was doing and I would kind of start pacing back and forth in the room and they'd look at me weird and wonder what I was doing. Well, I was in alpha and I'm challenged with this problem with this patient. And I've got all these things I'm trying to juggle and figure out, well, what's the most primary problem here? And we can ignore all these things, but there's one or two primary things that we need to find. And that's what we have to address. And that's what this person has to address. And, you know, and you figure these things out quite often when you're in alpha. And pacing is a good way to be in alpha. We don't always have to be lying down and meditating with our eyes closed or being in a lotus position. We could be in any position. We could be running. We're in alpha when we drive. Most people, it's called autopilot, where a number of areas of the brain get together and sort of allow us to function by juggling a lot of things. We're multitasking, thinking about when you first learned to drive, you had to think about oh yeah, that's the gas pedal. Oh, the brake is over there. Oh, there's a mirror here. Oh yeah. You have all these things to think about with intentional focus. And then at some point, you already know them all. And so now the brain can take over and get out of intentional focus and get into alpha where you're on autopilot. And it's a wonderful place to be. So I was doing that my whole career. I always did that. I did that from the earliest memories I ever had. And they were interpreted as being someone who couldn't pay attention in class, someone who didn't like the other people around, who didn't want to be around. I wouldn't talk because I was in alpha. I was staring into space. I mean, what did I know? And so the music became just a huge extension. I mean, it really, when I say in the introduction that it saved my life, it really did. I mean, it began to save my life when I was a teenager, when music suddenly was calling me, and I just interpreted that as, I'm a consumer and I've got to listen to the Beatles and Joni Mitchell and Paul Simon and all these singer-songwriters in particular, because they were pouring their hearts out into these songs, and you hear them and you think they're for you. Well, they are for you. They're for all of us. And so, that was sort of the journey that I started way back when, and the songwriting thing, waking up as a songwriter was I don't know how to describe it other than I decided to write a book to describe it.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, can't wait to read this book. I read the introduction and I skimmed the copy that you sent me. And I actually have two questions about it that I wanted to pose to you. One is, in the introduction, when you talk about the way the way a healthy human brain makes music, the harmonies that are present, the way that we have as a species evolved making that kind of music, right? In community, in collaboration with one another, right? Surrounded by these other sensory things. It's always, there would be fire, there would be movement, there would be nutrition. Like, there's all of these elements that are present in the celebration and making and experiencing of that music. So there's that. And then that really landed with me in a way. I'm like, wow, we're missing a lot of that in healthy ways. People listen to music in bars, or look at what a modern concert is like. I know with you and me with our sensory issues, like a rock and roll concert is really not a healthy place to be today for a lot of reasons.
It's not.
The noise, the food that they're like, so none of that really resonates with me. But here's the other thing that you said then that partners with this in my mind. And this is so fascinating to me. I want to hear more what you say about this. And how that compares to studies on songbirds and what we know about songbird populations as they're going extinct and how their music changes. So
yeah, this is the book kind of builds, and at the end, the chapter is called If Tomorrow Never Comes, and I talk about what you just mentioned, going to a bar and listening to this loud, overkill music. Some of it's good, but the crowd noise, the junk food, the unhealthy environment. This is where we've come after all these decades and centuries. Noise pollution is a serious problem. Junk food is a serious problem, but junk music has taken over. There's we talk about the tobacco industry, and now sugar is the new tobacco. Well, junk music is the new junk food, and junk music is everywhere, and it hurts our brains.
Mm.
And so, what is this doing to us as individuals and us as a society and us on this planet? It's really hurting us. And one of the things I've always done is look at the clinical results that I see, that I experience in my work, and then I will look at the scientific studies in different fields all over, because they're all related. We have specialties in medicine, which is a big problem, but we also have specialties in science, and then we have a lot of scientists who will do a study on anything if they get a grant for it. So, you have to sort of comb through this and say, okay, here's something interesting. Look at these scientists. They've studied songbirds, and what they showed was that songbirds who are on their way to extinction exhibit certain patterns in their music. And those patterns are a loss of melody and different changes in the function of their songs. We'll keep it at that for now. And there's a number of those studies. And then you look over here and you see other scientists studying human music over the decades. And well, gee, what they're finding are the same changes.
Mm.
And in fact, since the 70s, where music sort of hit this high quality peak and it's been really downhill, the scientists have shown that the changes that human music is making are very similar to the changes that the songbird music has been making. And there's a lot of talk. It's not just junk music where an industry puts out the top 100 hits because they get this young girl and young boy and they're going to make big stars out of them for as long as they can hang out there, and then they get rid of them and they get new ones, and they get songs made by committee for these people. And it's like the Monkees from the 1960s. The Monkees were a group that the TV and music industry said, hey, let's get these 4 dudes and put them, we'll get somebody to write songs for them, and we'll make them like the Beatles, and we'll make a lot of money. And they did that. Didn't last very long, but that is ongoing, and that's a good example of junk music. And so where do we go from here if tomorrow never comes? Well, the title of that chapter, If Tomorrow Never Comes, is from a song I wrote called If Tomorrow Never Comes. But when you get to the chorus, it comes down, it's a modal song, it comes down to the home chord, and it's, if tomorrow never comes, we have today. And we have today. This is our moment. This is our only moment. Humans are the only animals that can go and time travel. We can go back in time and we can go forward in time. Our brain is always trying to see where we're going. It's always got memories of the past. And sometimes we get stuck in that. We have today only. We have this moment, and we want to be in the moment. Anybody who studied any kind of meditation has heard that phrase, you want to be in the moment, because that's the greatest place to be. And that's what music can do for us. It can be in the moment with us. That 5-minute power break it's our moments in the music, and the physical, biochemical, and mental, emotional benefits from those 5 minutes. And I do it in the middle of the day. Sometimes I listen to a whole album, but it's sort of, I'm up early, I'm working, in this case, on the book, finishing up the book, and doing some planning some articles. But it's by the time I get to midday, I want to have a meal, and then I want to I want to just sit down and go into alpha for a while and regenerate my brain and body, and then wake up, and then it's sort of like, oh, I've got a whole nother day ahead of me. How wonderful. So gosh, I guess I went off on a tangent. I don't even remember your question. The songbirds, yes. We can take a lesson from the songbirds, and we can't battle the music industry, but we can stop listening to their garbage, their junk music. We can listen to our own music. We've got earbuds. If we're going to be going shopping, we could put our earbuds in and not listen to the music that's playing, because that music is propaganda. It helps us buy things we don't need, or don't want, or shouldn't have. It's part of the whole marketing thing. It's like, back in the 50s when they had doctors get on TV and say, well, smoke these cigarettes because they're good for your throat. I mean, they actually did that, and
I know.
they're doing the same thing today in different ways, of course. But we need to take responsibility, and we need to be in the moment.
Such good advice. I cannot wait to read this book. I want to ask you to talk just about a couple more things before we tell folks where to find your book and when it'll be ready. You were talking about, shopping, those environments, those public environments where, there's, so many things that hurt our brain, and the way that we're bombarded with stimulation. Now, because I had a brain injured kid who was hypersensitive to sounds, and I discovered my own hypersensitivity. And I don't even want to say I'm hypersensitive. I want to say I'm sensitive, right? Like, I don't think that's a problem, that when I eat a cookie, I feel sick afterwards. I think that's really good biofeedback, right? And I don't think it's a problem when I again have to go into a shopping mall or a place where there's too much stimulation. And like you said, it's junk. Like, those sounds are not harmonious. They're not. The speakers are crap. It's not high quality input, right?
It's junk music. It's like elevator, what they used to say, this elevator music. Well, it's like being on hold and listening to the music on hold. There's studies that show that actually creates negative thoughts, negative attitudes. So it has an effect. It has an instant effect in a negative way. And we control that. We're in charge, and it's not easy, because we're in a society that keeps getting sicker and sicker, because we're overtaken by these conglomerates, these people that are marketing bad things to us, and we have to battle that. And it's a battle we can win, but first we have to be aware of it, and then we have to be ready for it, like having some earbuds, or avoid going into a store at certain times, or into a mall, or avoiding malls altogether, and avoiding listening. I mean, it's amazing the routines that people have. They just turn the TV on, and when the commercial comes on, they actually listen to it. I haven't had a TV in 40 years, but I assume they're still doing that. And the same with radio, the car radio, the phones. I mean, there's so much more now that we're bombarded with from a noise standpoint.
Yeah. And you said it creates negative thoughts. One of the things that I've noticed, so there's also this thing called decision fatigue. Like, it literally wears out our brain's ability to process, to think clearly, to make rational decisions. All the frontal stuff goes down, right?
It pulls us out of alpha and gets us into beta pretty easily. So, we have to be careful with that. And there's just so much. I mean, that's a lot of that. I talk about giving people options when they shop, when they're at work, when they're home. What can they do? When they're home, put some music on, dance in the kitchen, I mean, there's just so much we can do as humans to help our brains and bodies all the time.
Such good advice. So good to know. So let's talk a little bit about why this is important for the body. I think, there's a lot to learn about the brain, and that's definitely your special area. I can't wait to, because I'm a brain geek. So I want to know all about the neurological stuff. But you talked about how getting into alpha waves, and particularly singing, listening to music that you like, how this helps to relieve stress via the cortisol in the bloodstream. What more do we need to know about that?
Well, stress is really the focus that I've had. Uh, I think since undergraduate school, when I learned about this guy Hans Selye, who's the guy who coined the word stress. He was a researcher, and he showed that stress affects the brain, which affects the pituitary gland, which tells the other glands, especially the adrenals, what to do. And he talked about stress from a physical standpoint, and these are my words now, but he said, there's the big picture. And the big picture is that we have physical stress, we have biochemical stress, we have mental, emotional stress. And so when we talk about stress, it's not just the emotional stuff or some psycho thing that, people kind of have these vague images about. The lack of physical movement is a stress. Too much physical movement is a stress. And from a biochemical standpoint, the metabolism is a big chunk of that. Nutrition is in there too. And so we have to look at all these things. And then the balance part: too much exercise, too little exercise, too much of certain nutrients, too little of certain nutrients. Avoiding stress. It's really quite simple. The problem again is we've got this influence on our brains from society that's trying to sell us something. Mm. And so when we think of anything healthy, think of anything healthy. Think of essential fatty acids. And you say that to a lot of people and they say, you mean fat? Yeah, fat. Dietary fat. Healthy, natural dietary fat is really important for us. Oh, no. Can't eat fat because we all know it's bad, right? Even though even the US government has done away with their fat recommendations. They used to say, you shouldn't have more than this much fat, and they've done away with that. Nobody knows about it because the media doesn't want to talk about it, because the low fat trend is so intensely popular still, because it's a huge moneymaker.
Yeah, it's profitable.
Yeah. And so when they take fat out of a food, it doesn't taste very good. So they got to put something back in, and it's usually sugar or flour or both. So it's the stress issue. It's all the stresses that affect us. And getting into alpha is a way to regulate in a natural way through the brain our stress. And I've always focused on the brain, but it's been very difficult when you talk to a group of athletes, for example. The brain is the most important part of an athlete's body. And you say that and people look at you weird, like, what are you talking about? It's my muscles. I've got to have strong muscles. I got to be fast because my competition's training a lot as we speak, and I'm sitting here and I got to go out and train more because, people really do think that way. And so we've got to overcome all these stresses, and we have what it takes. We have a brain. We have an incredibly wonderful brain. We just have to get it back.
Mm. I love that you put it like that too, get it back, that it was meant to be something different than what we're allowing. I love what you said about those athletes too. I work with some of those folks too, and it's hilarious. I'm not poking fun at anybody, but they think they have to work so hard to get faster. I'm like, actually, did you know that like that's all proprioception? Like all you have to do is when you have a healthy brain, you're naturally going to be faster. Why? Because your brain's going to send the right message to the right muscle at the right time. It's going to do all the right things, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, and in the book, I talk about how harmful it is to listen to music during exercise. And that's another thing. Everybody knows that music really is important for exercise, right? You go to the gym and that's what's bombarding your brain. You can't be an alpha in that situation. And even the studies show that music helps exercise, right? How does it help exercise? Well, it helps us push harder. It helps us overcome pain. It helps numb us from the pain. It raises our heart rate. Is that what training is all about? Well, that's the recipe for overtraining. And so all you have to do is look at the professional athletes. Look at a baseball player who's wearing earbuds before the game to kind of get into a good mood, get into alpha and, psych himself up. And then when this baseball player is coming to bat now, his name is announced and he has a special song that's played over the loudspeakers. And as soon as he gets close to the batter's box to hit, the music stops, the blaring stops, and his brain goes into autopilot, goes into alpha. He's already trained how to hit this ball. He knows exactly what to do. He doesn't have to think about anything. If he thinks about anything, he's not going to function very well. So we don't want the music when we're doing something important. That's why texting in a car is so dangerous, because it takes us out of alpha, takes us out of autopilot, and gives us an intentional focus. Intentional focus is ripping us out of alpha, putting us into beta, and we can't juggle all the things we need to do in a car. And people who are vulnerable to accidents are people who have a lot of beta and can't get into alpha and can't get into autopilot.
So fascinating. I also worry about people driving cars. I think they're all sugared up and they have slow reflexes. Or Haley says I'm impatient. It's one of those. I love what you said. So this idea about not listening to music while you exercise, I had never understood it that way. I know I've always hated it. I exercise outside. I've got a favorite trail I go to. And when somebody has a radio, I'm like, have you heard of earbuds? I mean, they either have earbuds in, which is fine. Or there's sometimes people that don't, like they've got a radio. And I think people do that, to try to help them get through it, because exercise is naturally so unpleasant for so many people.
Yeah, that's part of it. They need a distraction. I mean, what a wonderful place to be, like where you go on a trail. You're in the woods. You've got all these amazing sensations. We could see these amazing things. We can hear these amazing things. We smell these amazing things. We sense, we feel the woods. It's called forest bathing, actually. And talk about getting into alpha. Man, that'll get you into alpha. It'll reduce stress hormones. To crank up music in that situation is really a sad thing. I've always told athletes to listen to their bodies,
right,
when they work out, because our bodies, our brain is getting millions and millions and billions of messages from the body every moment. And the brain is analyzing it, and it's saying, okay, well, we're going to flex this muscle a little bit more now because the terrain has changed. And if you're listening to music, that isn't going to happen very well.
Yeah. it explains so much why so many people struggle to improve, and explains to me so much why I've always hated that. It is so important to me to have this silent space around my body so that I can hear what's happening within my body. And I've always felt that way. If we're taking our cues from out there somewhere, depending on who the out there is, it none of that takes us where we want to go. It's always what's from within, which I think I would reframe that now that we've had this talk. It's what's coming from within when I'm in an alpha state. That's where it all flows from, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is so enlightening. I can't wait to read your book. Can you tell us more about when it will be ready and where we're going to find it?
The book is called Be Sharp, and Be Sharp refers to obviously being sharp, brain sharp, but it's also a musical note. Be sharp. It's kind of a funny note because if you know music, you are stopped for the moment and you say, be sharp. Oh, that's just a C, which it is. So it's kind of a cute little title. And I won't I won't mess up the subtitle. Well, I could tell you what the subtitle is. It's right here. Your personal music journey to expand the mind, enhance the brain, and age well. I'm hoping it'll be available everywhere. It'll be available as an ebook and Kindle first, probably within a couple of weeks. And then it'll become available as a paperback after that. And everybody seems to get stuff from Amazon, so you can go to Amazon. But I'm excited. This is really the I think this is the most, and I'm not just, I don't usually say this. I've actually given negative reviews on some of my books back in the day when the publishers wouldn't let me include certain topics. I mean, it was really like that. This book has been the most fun. I feel like I've been writing it my whole life. This book has been the most intense book I've ever written. There have been numerous chapters and whole big chunks of the book that I just one day woke up and looked at it and said, this is crap. This is not exactly what I'm trying to say. And I'd start all over. And it's really, it's made me high. I feel so good. I have, there are places where I get tears in my eyes because I tell stories. It's very much a storytelling book. It's my story, and I'm trying to weave my story with the reader's story as they're reading it. And it made me think, and I never, in the beginning, I noticed it and I kept avoiding it, but I've never written autobiographical stuff because I always say I'm a Virgo and by nature I'm an introvert, but I've always had, my stuff is always here's why this works that way, and if you try this and it does that, it means this, that kind of stuff. Being autobiographical was it seemed to me an important way for me to get the points across and to get people's attention and to draw them out in a sense, to get on board with this. And in the beginning, I talked to my editor and I said, there's way too much autobiographical stuff here. And he said, well, you've never done that, number one. Number two, people are going to like it. And number three, some people are not going to like you after.
I don't know about that. I think it's a beautiful choice. I mean, it's one of the reasons I can't wait to dive in a little more deeply, because you haven't done that before. And people, I think, who have followed your work, and even people who are going to be new to find you through this book, are hungry to know a little bit more about the man behind this genius. And so I'm delighted that you're doing it this way. I really can't wait. So
Well, I touch on Carl Jung and of course Freud and some others, um, and um, Carl Jung Carl Jung would have said our creative expressions are our multiple personalities. We all have multiple personalities. And I was asked in an interview a few years ago, how could people find out more about me? And of course, that's the cue at the end of an interview to give your website address. And I said, they can listen to my songs because they are me. And if you want to know more about me, listen to the music. They just come flowing out, just in case anybody wants to know. I'm the kind of songwriter. I mean, talk about alpha and being in meditation. We're all familiar with the word flow and mindfulness. All these terms have, sort of become bandwagon things, but they're all the same. They're all this incredible alpha state. They're all these amazing moments of creativity from our passions. And these creative moments just flow out. And I give a lot of examples in the book about how this happens. And especially where I talk about pacing, because sometimes, you're sitting at the computer, you're coming up with some interesting stuff, and now you're not sure where to go. Where do I go? Okay, now you're going to get up and start pacing. And you're going to let your subconscious mind take over. You're going to go out in the woods and wander around, and you're going to listen to the birds, and you're going to look at the trees, and you're going to smell the forest, and suddenly you're going to just say, aha. And now you've got that part. Okay, now you're going to go back and look at the birds again. And next thing you know, you're at your computer again, and it's like taking dictation, because your subconscious mind has worked through all this issue that you had with trying to figure something out, a problem you're trying to solve, and it's figured it out. It's sent up to the conscious mind, and now you know what it is, and you just got to get it down on paper. When songs come, for most singer-songwriters, real human singer-songwriters, the song just flows out. And it's a 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute process. You don't think about it. Oh, this is a song about Sally. Let's see, what did she do today? It just flows out. It's like, all these great inventions, they weren't analyzed to death. They just came out. So there's a lot of examples about that. And that's a big part of what our passions can give us.
yeah, I got a question for you about that. So you're out in the woods, or if you pace in your room, your keyboard is handy, but what about I'm a writer too. What about those people who you're out in the woods and your best idea, or in the shower or driving, and your best ideas come and the song starts to download? What's your method for that? Like, do you have a way to capture that, or can you press pause? Will it wait till later to flow out of you? What do you do?
No, I usually carry a little pad with me, only for songs. I've never had to do it with anything else. Songs flow out, and I've learned, as other songwriters have, that there's always a song waiting to come out. It's like an outlet in the wall. Behind that outlet are wires, and those wires have electrons that are lined up, and they just sit there waiting for someone to come along and plug something in, and then they flow out. That's what songwriting is. That's what art is. That's what creativity, whatever field you're in, that's what creativity is. Neil Young said that when a song starts coming out, you've got to stop what you're doing and excuse yourself. And it's true. I've left events. I've gotten up from business meetings. I mean, when the song comes, it comes. When you go into alpha and you've got this passion that's driving something out, you better go somewhere, because if you don't do it, it's gone. And what a sad thing to lose, for a songwriter, to lose a song, because you'll never get it again.
It's really beautiful. Would you like to play a song for us today? You don't have to. I know I'm
Would I
totally
like to
putting you on the
play a
spot,
song?
but would you
Man.
like to play?
Gosh, I could.
It's up to you. We're still recording if you would like folks to hear something
How about
lovely.
a short, how about something that matches this lecture? What matches this lecture? Oh. I'll play something a little quiet and short, because you know the problem with digital
Mhm,
is that it can get distorted.
mhm.
Does that sound okay?
It sounds good to me. Can we
It
get a
says
thumbs up
it
from other
it
people if
says
that's okay?
playing
Oh.
music. Thank you, Zoom.
What would we do with?
I know you're all musicians. This is a song I wrote a few years ago called Wizard Shoes. I'm trying to think. I wrote it around the time we met, actually. No, it was after that. So this was an early song, but it was just after that. And I thought, gee, this is an interesting children's song. And I realized it's a song to bring the child in us out. Last night I saw the wizard shoes resting by the door. I did not choose this fateful night, the best thing I hoped for. I walked outside to see who had come for me. The time was still, but could I see the wizard on the floor? Was it me? I thought out loud as I passed through the door. I couldn't really see who had come to me. I had to see the wizard shoes again out by the door, but they were gone so far away, gone evermore. I didn't really see who had come for me. I came in and there it was, a little stone for me. Something here that I could see, the wizard left for me. I walked outside to see who had come for me. The wizard came for me.
Thank you, Phil.
Well, I don't know how that came across, but
Not the best recording ever, but I'm going to say that if folks want to hear, it's beautiful, and thank you for doing it in the moment. Your music is available in all streaming platforms, correct?
it is. There's
Spotify?
actually 150 some odd streaming platforms, which is really shameful, but that's capitalism. All of my music's available on my website for free. If you want to find Wizard Shoes, just search Wizard Shoes Maffetone. It'll come up on YouTube or wherever. And it's a much better recording in the studio.
Of course it is. So Phil Maffetone Music and philmaffetone.com for the health and fitness stuff. And we're all going to be looking out for your new book to be available on Amazon ASAP, right?
The sooner the better.
That's right. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And thank you
Thank
for
you,
all,
Darcy.
yeah, thanks for all the work you put out in the world.
Thanks.